How many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you? Robert Frost gave me that advice many, many years ago. He didn't give it directly to me, and I actually wasn't born yet when he wrote those words, but I think it was advice that I needed to hear. How many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you? I've had this conversation repeatedly throughout my life with people from all walks of life, including myself. And I probably need to have the conversation with myself more often than I do. But that's the point of the saying. How many things have to happen to you before something occurs to you? Here's the conversation. And I just had it actually several times in the last week. The conversation goes like this. And it could be a leader of a company. It could be a parent. It could be a spouse. It could be somebody dealing with a community member, a neighbor, a nonprofit. But the conversation goes like this. The relationship between myself and that other person, the relationship that I have between myself and that other person, it could be better, it would be better, if only they. If only they. I'm a husband, I'm a father of 2 daughters, one's a teenager, one is knocking on the door of becoming a teenager, I'm an owner of a business, I work with companies all over the world, and constantly there are these relationships, right, that you and I have with people in our world, and they could be better if only they. If only they. I wrote a chapter in my book, Who Are You Becoming, called Happen to the World. Happen to the world. And there's a little formula I put in there that says S plus R equals O. S plus R equals O. There's a situation, a story, a scenario, there's stuff going on. There's my ability to respond to that situation, story, stuff, and then there's an outcome. S plus R equals O. Situation plus response. My response to that equals outcome. And I want this better relationship with my spouse, or with my team, or with one of my peers, or with one of my clients, or with one of my kids, or with one of my family members, one of my in-laws. I want this outcome of a better relationship. And I don't know why, but I tend to point at the S, the situation, the stuff, the story, the scenario, them. I tend to point at them. Years ago, I wrote down, I'm married, and I wrote down, I want to have a world-class marriage. And then I thought about it, because all vision gets better if you let it marinate, right? And you revisit it, and you say, okay, I want a world-class marriage. And then I added this little phrase, no matter what. No matter what, and I don't like that piece of the statement, no matter what. That's a horrible piece, because that says no matter what stuff, story, scenario, situation, no matter what they do, right? World-class marriage, world-class relationship, no matter what. That's because that puts it all on the R, situation plus my response translates into world-class marriage. I don't understand this, but I always go with, what do they need to do differently? And here's the conversation I've had so many times repeatedly, and I know you have too. It's, if only they, if only they, if only that, if only this, if only the business world, if only the environment, if only the economy, if only the stuff going on around us. If only the weather, the finances, if only the market, if only the culture in the organization, if only that. And people tell me all the time, and I think I say it too, yeah, I've done everything I can. I've tried everything. Yeah, right. Okay, look at one relationship. My relationship, let's say, between myself and my spouse, or between myself and one of my daughters. I've tried everything. The answer is no. I haven't. The answer is no, not even close. Pretend for a moment. I want to challenge you, and I think I say this a lot, but I'm always talking to me, really. I'm always looking in this mirror and saying, challenge yourself, Jonathan, to pick one relationship. And just for a brief moment in time, let's pretend that you are 100% responsible for any potential positive progress made in that relationship. Let's pretend that they're going to do what they've always done. How hard is it to pretend that? I mean, come on. How hard is it to pretend that they might say some of the things they usually say? They might do some of the things they usually do, right? I mean, they might look at time, for example, the way they usually look at time. Maybe you have somebody in your team, somebody on your that works with you, that they always kind of show up slightly late. They always answer the email a day after you needed the response. They always put more into the answer than you wanted. Or maybe they always put less into the answer. You ask them about 5 things and they answer only one of them. Let's pretend that they will continue to do what they have always done. That's not hard to pretend. You know, in your marriage, in your relationship with your kids, in your relationship with one of your clients. Let's assume that they might continue to do what they've been doing for a long time. Now, I'm not pretending we can't influence them in any way. I'm actually the complete opposite. But let's just pretend for a moment that you can affect you, happen to your world for a bit. Let's pretend you're 100% responsible for any potential progress that can be made in that relationship. You want that relationship to be better than it is right now. You change your response. They show up late. They ignore you in a meeting. They keep going with their stuff. I've done everything, Jonathan. No, I haven't. No, you haven't. Jonathan, I'm me saying it all the time. I've tried everything. No, you haven't. Ask the question one more time. Ask the question slightly differently. Pause for longer than you normally do. Give an encouraging smile better than you normally do. Pretend you're 100% responsible for just one relationship, one connection in your world. And try it. Try it at a different level. Probably than you ever have. There's a book I reread on a regular basis, and I don't reread the whole book. I usually reread sections. Sometimes I just look at some of my highlights, some of my notes in the margin. This is actually my second copy. My first was obliterated. Actually, it was in bad shape, highlighted notes, falling apart, and then I gave it to a friend, and they finished it off, but it impacted this person. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, one of the greatest points of the whole book, he says, is that we have this last of the human freedoms. He says, you can have everything else taken from you except one thing, the last of the human freedoms, and that is the ability to choose your response despite the circumstances. And he says towards the end of the book, he says, what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, but rather the striving and struggling for a worthwhile goal, a freely chosen task. He says there's always a gap between what one is and what one should become. And then let me add this thought. He says, if architects want to strengthen a decrepit arch, they increase the load which is laid upon it. For thereby the parts are joined more firmly together. An arch, you picture an old arch, and I like to picture an old arch in a little Italian Tuscan village or town. And that old arch is in trouble. They increase the load on it. You want to take one of your relationships that's not as good as it could be. Because let's be honest, all of us, every relationship in my life and in your life is not probably quite as good as it could be. But pick one. Pick one. Maybe it's with one of your in-laws or with one of your kids or with maybe it's somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe it's somebody you see every day. But you pick just one and you say, you know what? Let me increase the load on me. Not try to figure out if they would only. Increase the load on you. You're the arch. You're the arch. S plus R. You're the R. You're the arch. Increase the load on you. Say, if I took 100% responsibility for any potential progress that might happen in that relationship, what are some of the things I could do? And get started. Get started. And get rid of the phrase, if only they. Get rid of the phrase, I've tried everything. I think the glimpses of time, the fractions of time when I've tried this experiment, it's been a game changer. Let's give it a shot together this week. Let's give it a shot together this week. Happen to the world.